And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite our next keynote speaker for the day, Ms. Deepali Khanna, Managing Director of the Asia region for the Rockefeller Foundation. Deepali joined the Rockefeller Foundation in 2015. She most recently served as director and managed one of the foundation's flagship initiatives in India, Smart Power for Rural Development. As the Managing Director of Asia Region Office, Deepali manages the foundation's policy, advocacy, grant making, and partnerships in Asia. She leads the Rockefeller Foundation's initiative to convene and catalyze strategic collaborations that advance development in Asia, as well as harness Asia's role in enhancing the well-being of humanity in the region and around the world. Prior to joining the Rockefeller Foundation, Deepali served as Director of Youth Learning with the MasterCard Foundation. The Rockefeller Foundation, as we all know, is an American private foundation established by the Rockefeller family. The foundation has a mission to promote the well-being of humanity throughout the world. Today, the foundation advances new frontiers of science, data, policy, and innovation to solve global challenges related to health, food, power, and economic mobility. So on behalf of ISEAN Climate Collective, a very warm welcome to you, Deepali, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Ranjana, and good evening, everyone. Of course, I want to begin by thanking the Impact Investor Council and Climate Collective for bringing together such an impressive community of finance institutions, incubators, philanthropies, impact investors, and hosting discussions over the next 2 days on developing India's climate tech ecosystem. It's truly an honor to be speaking to all of you. As a science-based philanthropy, the Rockefeller Foundation has always been committed to leapfrog innovations and breakthroughs to advance the welfare of humanity. We believe in the potential of rapidly emerging technologies for transformative solutions. Last month, the IPCC report warned that India will see increased heat waves while glaciers will melt further with more compound events from rising sea levels like flooding. It also raised an alarm about a 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature rise well before 2040. And if we do nothing, we will hit a 2 degrees Celsius rise between 2040 to 2060. If there's anything profoundly evident from these warnings, is that our race towards net zero must be quickened to be achieved well before 2050. We cannot afford laggard attitudes, comfortable targets, and denial of any kind. Recently, I read a book called The Ministry for the Future, a novel that opens with a vividly real heat wave in India in 2025, which an international climate crisis body is trying desperately to control through geoengineering. This international body, which comes to be known as the Ministry for the Future, is an international coalition that is tasked with tackling the consequences of our carbon-fueled progress, that is climate crisis. I'd recommend all of you to read it. And indeed, tackling some of our time's biggest problems is going to need collective action. It will need the knowledge, resources, commitment from all leaders, policymakers, investors, scientists, and a lot of entrepreneurs like you. The role of philanthropy is to bring together the right constellation of actors who see the same how and come together to reimagine new pathways to unlock the power of that how in ways that would accelerate solving the SDGs. This year, the foundation announced the formation of a global coalition aimed at providing sustainable energy for 1 billion people within this decade. Organizations joining this call to action include the African Development Bank, CDC, the UK's Development Finance Institution, European Investment Bank, International Energy Agency, IRENA, UNDP, US International Development Finance Corporation, and USAID. Our goal is to bring a $10 billion pledge to launch the platform, which includes a $1 billion commitment made along with the IKEA Foundation. We expect the bulk of the remaining funds to come from DFIs, as well as other multilaterals and bilateral donors. USDFC and the IFC aim to deploy $2 billion each in partnership with us. By harnessing global capital and cooperation to advance distributed renewable energy-led energy transition solutions, and spurring investment that builds the smart grid of the future, we have the potential to give hundreds of millions of people the opportunity to rise out of poverty while averting carbon emissions. This platform will do three things. First, mobilize and coordinate concrete DRE roadmaps to unlock public and private capital flows into DRE technologies to help create local jobs, promote sustainable livelihoods, and build an environmentally smart, resilient electricity grid of the future. Second, identify and support appropriate regulatory policy and financial regimes in partnership with national leadership that will build capacity and create an environment to increase renewable energy technology investments and associate economic development partnerships. And finally, promote collaborations, as we heard from the IFC director, to enhance project development and new financing instruments to catalyze billions of dollars of additional annual investment in DRE projects in underserved markets, including Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and Asia. As we all know, Asia has founded its economic growth on coal, even though the carbon cost is already evident. However, energy transition is picking up momentum, and the pace of change is accelerating in Asia, along with the rest of the world. Most notably, investments in energy transition, particularly in renewables, has grown. Asia has an opportunity to leverage learnings from the past decade of energy transition and leapfrog its energy transition journey. Last year, we announced a commitment of divesting our $5 billion endowment from existing fossil fuel interests while refraining from future fossil fuel investments. It all started, however, a decade ago when the Rockefeller Foundation made ending energy poverty in a clean, sustainable way a top priority. Because low carbon and climate resilient asset classes are largely underserved by public and private capital markets, and climate risks are often ignored or underplayed by key decision makers. Massive investments in renewable energy, transmission lines, battery storage, and solar PV microgrids are needed to connect the more than 800 million energy poor households around the world into the modern economy. We are also working across the foundation to bring market-driven solutions that reduce emissions while creating jobs and wealth-building opportunities for those that have been shut off out of economic progress and are bearing the brunt of this pandemic. There are an estimated 3.5 billion people who have their potential diminished by unreliable or insufficient energy access, predominantly provided by carbon-emitting fuels. Providing clean, safe, and reliable electricity is essential to creating jobs and economic opportunity for more than 40% of the world's population, while also combating a rise in temperature and sea levels that is endangering the world. This is where our experience has shown us that DRE systems are core to success. Decentralized, digitized, data-driven technologies have much to offer to centralized power providers, including a comprehensive access strategy for the unelectrified populations. Our Smart Power India work, or the entity that we created, was established in 2015 to support last-mile electrification by providing technical support to decentralized energy-serving companies and to help families move themselves out of poverty by using reliable electricity. We've seen that mini grids provided a variety of direct and indirect benefits, ranging from job creation to increased agricultural production through multi-cropping, growth of new businesses and jobs, and powering of school and health centers. Across all the people that Smart Power India serves, the small businesses that now get power through the mini grids have seen an almost 50% increase in their revenue and their income. Since many of these are women-headed enterprises, those economic gains are reinvested in the welfare of their children, in their nutrition, access to school, and efforts that lift entire communities. For the last 5 years through Smart Power India, we have been field testing new technologies and business models that could take decentralized renewable energy from an off-grid alternative to a mainstream component for widespread rural electrification. Building on these foundations, we launched the Tata Power Renewable Microgrid Initiative in 2019 in partnership with India's largest integrated power company, Tata Power. TPRM anticipates being a force multiplier that will create 100,000 rural enterprises, 10,000 new green jobs, and irrigation support to about 400,000 local farmers. It is expected to be the world's largest microgrid operator, and we are very proud to be associated with it. This venture has the ambition to build 10,000 microgrids to connect 5 million Indian households and reduce 1 million tons of carbon emissions annually. We've seen that investments in mitigating or adapting to climate change have grown substantially over the decades, crossing the half trillion mark in 2017 and 2018. However, most flow to large-scale renewables. In India, the DRE sector has faced a unique challenge. Companies are hampered by an inability to access it. Due to small size, lack of track record, and skewed risk-reward profile, existing lenders remain wary of providing the much-needed low-cost and risk-tolerant capital to allow the sector to develop at scale. Clean tech or climate tech startups are likely more inclined to be more capital-intensive than software startups. Most of the end users of these startups prefer products that have demonstrated efficacy or solutions that are scalable. Moreover, climate tech solutions often cut across various subsectors and technologies, increasing the inherent complexity. This requires more sophisticated support for innovation to succeed. Infrastructure to support prototyping, testing, and technical validation, mentors with a deep understanding of the sector, as well as wide networks of experts with deep domain knowledge. This, along with a lack of early stage financing options, where investors are preferring to support later stage companies and avoiding ventures needing product development, are amongst the significant hurdles that the clean tech entrepreneurs face. One of the core focus areas of our Global Energy Coalition is advancing early stage innovations. We will do so by supporting an ecosystem of partners at that stage, that is incubators, accelerators, pilots, field deployment, and funds. Investing in systemic impact by growing the clean tech ecosystem while challenging our dependence on fossil fuel is a pathway towards a long-term energy transition in India. To put into perspective, our commitment to support and grow impact investing nearly a decade ago, along with JP Morgan and Global Impact Investing Network, or GIN, we found that impact investment was an emerging asset class that would reach 400 billion and probably up to 1 trillion by 2020. Astoundingly, in 2020, the market reached roughly 715 billion as per GIN. According to McKinsey, the quantum of impact and investments made in India from 2020 to 2016 was over $5.2 billion. Given its size, population density, and diversity, India attracts over half of the total impact capital in the South Asia region. With such remarkable growth over the years, we can only wonder how far impact investment might advance from 2020 to 2030. So we're very optimistic. But in India, one size does not fit all. As heterogeneous the geography is, the needs of the end users or people are also different, and therefore availability of impact funds does not mean they're available for all social entrepreneurs. One of the most critical parameters that impact investors watch out for is the ability of entrepreneurs to understand and organize the entire value chain of the market they operate in. For their solutions to be market ready, there should be a strong understanding of the consumers, the cost economics, external drivers, and the entire business model landscape, including elements such as who the customer would ultimately be, who would pay for which element of the solution, and the ecosystem around the solution. For instance, if the solution is an energy efficient solar-powered cold storage, one way of introducing the solution could be transactional, selling the product to the user and stepping away. But the more effective model would be to look at the entire value chain. What kind of produce is being put into the cold storage? Who are the users? What is the premium they would get from the cold storage? Who would ultimately buy the produce? All these should be understood well, and in some cases, even enabled. If any of these pieces fall through, the product is blamed instead of that part of the value chain, and success of the solution is limited. Another important parameter is the product market fit. That is, how well the solution matches the customer needs. This involves not just designing the solution well, but a deep understanding of the consumer. The solution should meet criteria like reliability, affordability, accessibility, and availability. The traditional technology sectors, particularly digital and software solutions, have established approaches to find product market fit through years of innovation cycles and on successful companies. A similar playbook for climate tech startups is the need of the hour to untangle and simplify the lab to market journey. The need is urgent because while India's clean tech startup ecosystem is still in its nascent stages, the growing interest and investment in the space is not only positive for the country's own energy transition, but also offers the potential for global impact. Communities in India share characteristics with communities across Southeast Asia and Africa, which means that if impact investors back solutions developed in India, they could be scaled to benefit the global South. I also see that the role of philanthropic institutions in the development of this ecosystem can be dimensional. In addition to creating impact through their own grants, they can inspire, educate, catalyze private finance to enter this sector through various ways. The focus of philanthropy in India has also undergone a shift in the recent decade, largely driven by shift in India's demographics and development needs and the type of investments by various stakeholders. Whereas earlier, more investments were charitable, addressing extreme poverty, they have now shifted to strategic and impact investment, focusing on addressing the challenges of climate change, improving access and affordability of energy among low-income households. The Rockefeller Foundation Catalytic Capital, or RFCC, is an example of how philanthropic institutions can galvanize blended finance. It enables foundations, impact investors, businesses, governments, and other like-minded funders to combine their resources to build funding solutions for social impact and bring about transformational change. RFCC offers a new innovative way for foundations, impact investors, and governments to combine their resources to address this funding gap and bring about the transformational change required to solve some of these critical problems. The cost of addressing the world's most critical problems, like climate change, health, reaches into the trillions, far exceeding the individual reach of both traditional philanthropies and most governments. This is why we publicly urge G20 leaders to finally commit to reinvigorating international finance institutions to restart the global economy with long overdue investments in clean energy and human capital that can avert another crisis. As a result, IMF Executive Board backed a $650 billion allocation of special drawing rights, advancing the distribution of currency reserves to IMF's 190 member countries. In another example of mobilizing the right kind of funding, our Global Energy Coalition offers flexible and concessional capital to de-risk scalable energy transition projects and support developers to scale their operations, but enabling cash flows from DFIs and commercial investors. It will offer a mix of instruments such as equity, subordinated debt, guarantees, and grants, including recoverable grants for proposed transactions. It will seek to address the challenge of local currency risk and availability across its portfolio through a range of potential approaches, including partnering local capital providers that will be key to the DRE ecosystem over time. The challenge of scaling up investment in clean energy access is not new, but the urgency is. The tools are finally at hand. The time to act is now. We are committed to collaborating with global investors, international organizations, and governments, and focus on driving holistic public-private investment in infrastructure that accelerates access to clean, safe, and renewable energy across Asia. We are envisioning a world in which each citizen has access to modern healthcare services and every door to increase well-being is open for excluded communities. It is climate resilient world far more insulated to the systemic shocks that are likely to be a defining feature of the century ahead. I trust the discussions taking place today and tomorrow will advance the narrative to prioritize funding necessary to accelerate innovations in clean tech. I'm also excited to learn about the findings of the report that's being unveiled right after. And to everyone listening in right now, I would like to say that this is our future. We have the best minds and the strongest commitment to bend the climate curve, investing and working together to support the solutions that provide power to the people and communities that need it most, while protecting our planet is the only way for a true recovery that is inclusive and protects the planet. Thank you, Ranjana.
Thanks, Deepali. This was so insightful. Thanks for diving into the role of philanthropy and its potential in bringing together the right constellation of actors who see the same how and come together to hack new ways to solving the SDGs. We look forward to engaging with Rockefeller Foundation on some of these agendas going forward. And thank you very much once again for being here today.